Good morning and happy Wednesday, everyone. My name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. As always, I'm here to help you break down tonight's NBA DFS main slate on both DraftKings and FanDuel. If you haven't already, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel. That helps us get more free content like this out to you. Also, if you're not already a member of Occupy Fantasy, check the links in the description below. As a member, you get access to the model you see here, which I'll be using throughout the video. It has ownership percentage. You can sort by value for both sites, as well as OF Index, which will show you the best raw point plays. We also have a single lineup builder, multi lineup builder, private Discord server full of seasoned DFS pros to help you improve your game. And we usually have a 30-minute window leading up to each slate's lock where you could ask your lineup and slate specific questions. All right, so let's get into the slate now. We got a massive one tonight, 10 gamer. This time of year for NBA gets totally chaotic. There's a ton of teams tanking. A lot of teams who already kind of know where they stand in the playoff race, so they're resting players, trying to get healthy for the playoffs. And yeah, it's just total chaos almost every single night. And on a 10 gamer like this, I mean, we're going to have a ton of value. There's going to be a bunch of good payouts. So we should have a lot of options to consider. As always, I'm going to have a FanDuel window open, a DraftKings window open. I'm going to go through each game team by team, talk through the injury situations. I'll let you know which plays I'm on as things stand, as well as which injury situations to keep an eye on. But again, 10 games, going to try to go through quickly. I know I tend to kind of get a little bit wordy on some of these. So this is certainly one where I'm going to have to speed things up. But let's get into this now. Again, 10 game slate locking at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard. Only one 7 o'clock game. We have the Bucks at the Pacers. Bucks are 12-point favorites on the road. We're looking at a 238-point game total here. Starting on the Pacers side of things, we got Tyrese Halliburton out again. Nobody healed. That's a new one. Chris Duarte's out, as is Kendall Brown. Miles Turner is listed as questionable. That's going to be significant. We got to keep an eye on that piece. If Turner's out, keep an eye on who starts at center, whether it's Jalen Smith or Isaiah Jackson. Both those guys are going to be viable. You won't want them in the same lineup. Jackson is the better fantasy point per minute producer, but if Smith's starting, he is a little bit safer. You kind of rely on his minutes a bit more. But if Turner's out, you can certainly go to either of them as a quality value play in that front court. But what we already do know is that with Halliburton out and Buddy Hield out, we're going to be able to go to players like Benedict Mathurin, Andrew Nemhard, and then TJ McConnell coming off the bench. So McConnell, even with so many guards out, has been coming off the bench. Not necessarily hitting value consistently in this role, but obviously he does have a very high ceiling at that 6K price tag. So I don't mind him here. Mathurin, too cheap on both sides, 5,600 over on DK, 5,400 over on FanDuel. Probably my favorite play here. There's also a decent chance he stays in the game if it does get a little bit out of hand, as far as a blowout goes or something like that. I do like Andrew Nemhard here. Nora, Naismith, both fine options, not anything I'm really forcing in. Mathurin is certainly the priority in this one. And then if Miles Turner's in, I don't know. I don't know that I want to get to any of the front court pieces, but if he's out, you can certainly look to Jackson or Smith. I prefer Jackson of the two, regardless of whether he's starting or not. But ideally, you're probably going to want to play the starter in cash or single entry. But yeah, as things stand, definitely get some Mathurin. I'll go ahead and pencil him in on both sites. Um, Again, even if this game gets a little bit out of hand, I think he still plays his full rotations. Um, We've seen that out of Carlisle in the past. This is a young team. They want to see what they have with some of these guys. So I really do like Mathurin here. And then obviously Nemhard, a little bit lower owns, a little bit riskier, but similar upside as Benedict Mathurin. Actually, a little bit less scoring dependent as well. So I don't mind him as a tournament pivot. And then again, Nora, Naismith, all fine options. Definitely keep an eye on that Miles Turner news, though. Over on the Milwaukee side of things, looks like Giannis is listed as probable. No Jay Crowder tonight. Goran Dragic is listed as probable. He's been out for a couple of games. No Joe Ingles. Actually, Ingles is questionable, as is Chris Middleton. So if Middleton's in, I think he will be in here. He was out last game. I think he was resting on. Actually, no, he was in last game, rested on the front end of that back to back. So I imagine he goes here. But if Middleton's out, that's going to be a boost to both Drew and Giannis. Giannis, as far as payups go, is one of the best raw point plays on the entire slate. Obviously, there is some blowout risk here with it being a 12-point spread. But the Bucks are on the road. It is a very high total. I think even if they do blow out the Pacers, he should probably get close to value just playing three quarters. We've seen that out of Giannis plenty of times before, so he's one of my favorite payups on the slate. I'm not going to add him in just yet. I want to leave us some flexibility, but definitely look to Giannis as one of the better pay up options on the board. He's even better if Middleton's out. Brook Lopez looks fine here. Not a priority. A little bit expensive, especially on FanDuel, but he's been consistently hitting value. And then Drew Holiday, like I mentioned, he's fine here. A little bit too cheap on both sites, even with Middleton in. With Middleton out, he's going to be appealing. But Middleton, if he's in 8,800 on DK, that's not a price I can pay with Giannis healthy. Um, 7,800 on FanDuel, maybe I could get to him, but really not a priority for me over there. So it wouldn't shock me to see suddenly they rule out Giannis or something like that. They could probably beat this team even with him out of the lineup, in which case all the other starters would see a considerable boost. Bobby Portis as well if he slides in the starting lineup. But as things stand, really, really like Giannis where you can afford him. Don't mind Drew, but that's really it for Milwaukee. It is a great game environment though, so don't be shy about playing pieces from this one. Moving into the 7:30 window now, we get several games here. First, we got the Mavericks at the 76ers. 76ers are 4-point favorites at home. Joel Embiid and James Harden are both listed as questionable. So let's talk about Philly first. So this is pretty self-explanatory, but I'll go through it anyway. If Embiid's in and Harden's out, Embiid looks excellent here. If Harden's in and Embiid's out, Harden looks excellent here. If they're both out, Maxey, Harris, and Melton are outstanding plays. If one of the big two of Embiid and Harden are out, Maxey, Harris, and Melton are all solid options. So those are the five players I'm considering here, really regardless of who's in or out. It's just going to be a like question of how much we like them. So I really like Embiid if he's in. If everyone's healthy and in, I think you can get to Embiid and feel pretty good about it. He's going to be comparable to Giannis in terms of upside. Dallas not the fastest team, but their front court defense is spotty at best. I certainly could see Embiid having a ton of success in a matchup like this, even with James Harden on the floor. But again, if Harden's out, Embiid's going to be right there with Giannis as one of the best play ups on the board. And then yeah, if Embiid's out, maybe we see Paul Reed start at center. I think they gave the nod to Dwayne Dedman last time Embiid sat. I'm really not all that interested in either of them, but that does create kind of a trickle down effect as far as usage is concerned. So players like Harden, Maxey, Harris, Melton are all going to look excellent. The good news is this is a pretty early game at 7:30. We should have this news before the slate locks, so definitely keep an eye on this one. But again, I'm really only interested in the starters if this team is healthy. Um, really only interested in Embiid or Harden, and then Maxey, Harris, Melton look great if either of those guys are out. And then obviously, if Embiid's out, Harden's great. If Harden's out, Embiid is great. A little bit redundant there, but it is worth repeating. Um, all right, over on the Dallas side of things, really no significant injury news other than Maxi Kleber being questionable. Luka's been excellent, even with Kyrie on the floor. Kyrie just hasn't had the usage I think many expected him to. This has been a tricky few weeks for Dallas. They're fighting for the playoffs now, so they're going to be very invested in this game here. So I like Luka. I think Kyrie's fine in tournaments. He did look better last game out. But that's really it. I don't have much interest in Wood, Bullock, Hardaway, any of these secondary options. Josh Green's been decent. We've seen Jaden Hardy have some big games as outliers, but he's overpriced. So for me, I like Luka here. Don't mind Kyrie, but really tough to prioritize anything against Philadelphia. It is a tough matchup, but I'm not going to talk anyone off of playing Luka Doncic. Um, Next game on the slate now, we have the Rockets at the Nets. Nets are 11-point favorites at home, 229-point game total here. The Nets are looking to secure that sixth seed so they don't have to be in the playing game. With a win here, they can move a full game in front of Miami. So this is a very important game for them here as well. No Ben Simmons, who's been shut down for the season. Drew Smith, David Duke, G Leaguers, they're out. Edmund Sumner's questionable. Um, so yeah, I don't mind some pieces from Brooklyn here. It is a wide spread, but it's also a pretty high total. We're looking at a 229. Bridges looks fine. He's been excellent over the past couple of weeks. Dinwiddie looks good. There's a ton of good guard plays on the slate though, so I'm not really rushing to get to him. Royce O'Neal, regardless of whether he starts or comes off the bench, I don't mind him as the last man in. And then Nicholas Claxton, obviously a solid center option. We saw some big games out of Cam Johnson. He's very scoring dependent. He needs that three to be falling for him to hit value, but we do see that time and time again. And in a soft matchup against Houston, I could see him getting to value here. But for me, I really like Bridges. I really like Dinwiddie. Those are kind of the two players I'm going to be targeting. But I'm not going to call either really a core play at this time. We're going to have to kind of wait and see how this slate shakes out. I think we're going to get better mid range and better value, but don't shy away from Brooklyn here. This is a great matchup. They do have a lot to play for. Over on the Houston side of things, Jay Sean Tate is out. Ty Ty Washington is back down with the G League. Um, So yeah, nothing too significant here. I could see getting to Sengun as a center play. Not something I'm prioritizing, but it is a decent matchup. Porter and Green both look fine, but they're both healthy, kind of priced where they should be. So they just kind of get lost in the shuffle of all the great guards on the slate. If Terry Eason were to start here with Tate out, he'd be very appealing. I don't know that we see that though. It's probably more likely that it's just Martin Smith and Sengun in that front court. But if Eason gets a little bit of a bump, I don't mind him on DK at 5,500. But yeah, really no priorities for me here on Houston. All the starters look fine. Eason is an okay gamble in tournaments, regardless of whether or not he starts. But it's just tough for me to want to prioritize anything in this one. All right, we got another 7:30 game on the East Coast here. We're looking at the Heat at the Knicks. The Knicks are 5-point favorites at home, 223-point game total. So this one's going to be a little bit tricky. Miami is on a back-to-back, so Butler sat last night. I think he's going to be good to go here. But Hero and Bam, obviously better if Butler's out of the lineup. Bam is cheap enough on both sides that I kind of like him here regardless. 7,700 on DK feels too cheap. Don't mind the AK on FanDuel. It's just you're using up that center spot. They took away his power forward eligibility. So it's tough for me to want to get to him. Don't mind Love is kind of a punt. He had a really good game last night, but he saw some extra minutes, so I'm not sure I'm going to go back there. But yeah, if Butler's in, he's fine on DK. Don't love the FanDuel price, but Bam looks good on both sides. And then Hero's fine, but very scoring dependent, wide range of outcomes. With Butler in the lineup, I don't know that he sees enough usage to consistently exceed value at his price point. So I don't mind some Heat players here, but really nothing I'm prioritizing. Over on the Knicks side of things, Jalen Brunson is once again questionable. Derrick Rose is listed as questionable. Not sure the Derrick Rose news matters much. But yeah, if Brunson's in, he's a decent play here. Obviously, not the best matchup against Miami, but if he's out, we could once again go back to Emmanuel quickly, who had a massive, massive game with Brunson out last time around. We've also seen some really big games out of Quentin Grimes with Brunson out of the lineup as he slides into the starting lineup and plays solid rotational minutes. I think he actually starts regardless of whether Brunson's in or out, but still, I'm seeing much higher usage rate with Brunson out of the lineup. So if Brunson's in, he's fine, as is Randall. Wouldn't mind using Robinson as a punt at center, but not a priority. But if Brunson is out, then Quickly and Grimes both look excellent here. Both priced up, so not as much of a priority as they've been on past slates, but certainly a spot I'd be considering getting to some next, even in a tough matchup with Miami. So keep an eye on that news as things stand. Let's say Brunson's in. He's a little too cheap on DK. I can see getting to him over there, but there'd really be no priorities for me for New York. All right, moving into the 8 o'clock window now. Got a few 8 o'clock games. We got the Pistons at the Thunder. Pistons are 11.5 point underdogs on the road in OKC. We'll start with OKC because they are on a back-to-back. They're playing for a playoff spot right now. So earlier in the season, SGA was resting on back-to-backs. I think he's going to go here. If he's out, obviously that's a big boost to. Actually, no. Did he rest yesterday? Okay, I mixed that up. So SGA was out yesterday, which meant major, major usage to Jalen Williams and Josh Giddey. We saw excellent games out of them. Isaiah Joe was shooting the lights out. He looked great there as well. So I think SGA is going to be in tonight. If he's out again, though, go back to Jalen Williams, go back to Josh Giddey, go back to Lou Dort, and that is Jalen with an Len, not Ylin. That is a front court player. Jalen Williams is a wing. Um, Len, and he is the much better fantasy producer. So with Giddey and Williams as priorities with SGA out. You could also look to Lou Dort and Isaiah Joe as secondary options. If SGA is in, though, I do like SGA. I think he's going to be solid here, just over 10K on both sites. Um, Plenty of upside at a good guard position, but I think that's going to keep his ownership reasonable. But another situation we have to keep an eye on, waiting on their injury report. To me, if I'm guessing, which I am, I think SGA plays. But again, if he's out, prioritize Jalen Williams, prioritize Josh Giddey, and then Lou Dort and Isaiah Joe are both going to look excellent. And if SGA's in, you can still get to Williams and Giddey, but SGA would be the better play of the three, even at his expensive price tag. All right, so wait and see on that one for sure. On the Detroit side of things, we got no Bojan, no Burks, no Cade, no Diallo, no Magruder, no Stewart. So Jalen Duren is back in the lineup. Not sure how many minutes he's going to see here. Um, a little bit overpriced for me. I could see getting to him on DK at 5,100, but using one center on Duren at 6,700 on FanDuel just not something I consider doing. Killian Hayes, affordable on both sites, like the 6,600 price tag on DK, 100 cheaper on FanDuel. He's solid here. Jaden Duren, wide range of outcomes, very scoring dependent. And then Marvin Bagley's had some big games, but he's overpriced now. So the prize here, if there is one, is probably Killian Hayes. Doesn't always have the highest usage rate, not always taking a ton of shots, but he's going to be on the floor. And with guys like Burks and Bojan, et cetera, out, he is going to see increased usage. So Killian Hayes probably my favorite Piston here. Don't mind Ivy or Duren in tournaments on DK. Um, but yeah, really tough for me to want to get to much of Detroit. They just aren't a great team, and they're pretty healthy, so they're all about price where they should be. And I mean, obviously, a bunch of guys are out, but the prices have adjusted, is what I mean. So I misspoke there. But for me, Killian Hayes is the one Piston I'm really interested in. All right, moving on to the next one, we have the Clippers at the Grizzlies. Grizzlies are 4-point favorites at home, 233-point game total here. Clippers, no Paul George, no Marcus Morris. Norm Powell is questionable. Norm Powell's back, and we get word that his minutes aren't going to be limited. He'll be interesting as obviously Paul George is out. But right now, I think it's probably more likely that he sits. Um, but regardless, I think we can get to Kawhi here at 10K flat and feel pretty good about it. Obviously, increased usage for him with Paul George out of the lineup. And then Russ Westbrook as well. He looks fine here, pretty inconsistent, doesn't really get over 30 minutes. But under 8K, he does have some upside as he is going to see increased usage here. So I really like Kawhi. That's really the one play for the Clippers I'm all that interested in. Not the best matchup against Memphis. Memphis is on a back-to-back. They rested John Morant last night, so I imagine Morant will be back in the lineup. If Morant were to be out, you could go back to Tyus Jones, Desmond Bain, etc. But I think he's going to be in here. He's still not quite seeing his full run of minutes since his suspension, but he does certainly have upside in a match like this, so I don't mind him here. But this is just one of those teams all kind of priced where they should be. Not going to prioritize anything from this one. I can see getting maybe some Xavier Tillman over on FanDuel with both Clark and Adams out. But yeah, at power forward, I think there are better options in that range. So, assuming John Morant's in, there's really just nothing we're prioritizing from Memphis. They're all kind of priced up a bit as if he's out. And if he's in, obviously, there's just no upside on those price tags. All right. We got another good one here. We got the Lakers at the Bulls. Lakers fighting for that playoff spot. 2.5-point favorites on the road. 227.5-point game total. Let's start on the Lakers side of things. So LeBron was back last time out. He's listed as questionable. I imagine he plays here again tonight. Wouldn't shock me if he sat, in which case, obviously, players like Davis, Russell, Reeves would look better than they do right now. But with LeBron in, I can still see maybe getting this some Davis. Reeves is going to be overpriced with LeBron back in the lineup. But D'Angelo Russell now probable. He should, as long as you think he sees his full run of minutes, he's reasonably priced below 8K. So, yeah, another tricky situation where everyone's kind of priced up as though a star is out with LeBron, but now that he's back, everything feels a little bit overpriced. I can still see getting to some AD here. It isn't a terrible matchup against Chicago, but at these price points, it's just really tough for me to want to prioritize anything from LA. All right. Over on the Chicago side of things, we got Javante Green, Alex Caruso, both questionable. Um, if Caruso is out, maybe we get more minutes for Kobe White and Patrick Beverly. They could become decent value, but for now, really not all that interested in them. Um, Zach Levine's price is down. He's just 8,100 on both sides. I actually like that a lot. I kind of consider him one of the better mid-range plays. I know I haven't penciled in anything yet, but we do have some of the better value parts or pieces in the later games. I might go ahead and add Levine though right now. Just taking a look at his game logs. Not a great game last time out, but it was a tough matchup against the Clippers. I do like the 81 price tag over on FanDuel, and he's the same over on DK. I'll leave him out for now, but I do really like Levine here. DeRozan also solid, a little bit more expensive, but similar upside. Nikola Vucevic also fine as a center play. There's just a lot of good centers on the slate. You could maybe use Drummond on a punt on DK if Caruso's out. We have seen in the past Drummond gets increased minutes whenever anyone from the regular rotation falls out. Obviously, he's Vooch's direct backup, but yeah, they run less small ball with guys like Caruso out of the lineup. So maybe you can get to some Drummond if Caruso's out. For me, probably wouldn't get there. For now, I do really like Levine though. Just tough for me to call him a priority with so many good plays in that mid range. All right. Moving on, we have the Utah Jazz at the San Antonio Spurs. Jazz are only 6 point favorites on the road, 234.5 point game total here. Starting with San Antonio, we got Kem Birch and Charles Bassey out, Keldon Johnson out, Jeremy Sochan out, and Devin Vassell is out. So all the biggest names for the Spurs seem to be out here except for Zach Collins, except for Trey Jones, Devontae Graham. So keep an eye on the starting lineup. As things stand, Zach Collins does look excellent here. Certainly too cheap on both sides, knowing his upside with Bassey out of the lineup. I'm just going to take a quick look at him. I know he's been banged up. I don't know if it's real injuries or they're just kind of doing their tanking thing where they rest most of their good players. But for me, I like Zach Collins a lot on FanDuel where you can play him at power forward. And I'm actually pretty comfortable using him on DK as well where you can play two centers. So you can go ahead and add Collins on both sites. Should see a lot of usage in that front court with Sochan and Keldon Johnson out of the lineup. Um, Devontae Graham's been good coming off the bench. He's cheap here. I think it's more likely than not that we see Trey Jones get the start, though. He's probably the safer play at point guard, but I think you can go with either and feel pretty good about it. Keita Bates, Giop, if he starts, he's fine. Not a high usage player, but cheap enough that he could hit value fairly easily just off blocks and rebounds, etc. But for me, yeah, Collins is the priority here. I do like Graham, would prefer to see him start. I think it's more likely than not he comes off the bench, though, so I expect that ownership to come down. If Trey Jones gets the nod here, which I think he will, I could see going to him at point guard. A little bit pricey on FanDuel at 6,400, but for me, I mean, I don't know. I kind of like him. And then over on DK, he's even cheaper. Where is he? Actually, yeah, I'll leave him on DK and pull him off FanDuel. 6,400 is a little bit expensive. He doesn't always get over 30 minutes, but at 5,700 on DK, I do consider kind of a borderline core play. But again, that's if he starts over Devontae Graham. If Devontae Graham gets a start, he's the much better play at point guard. But I think Pop's going to continue to run out Jones. All right, so we really like Collins. We really like whoever starts at point for the Spurs. Then over on Utah, we got some injury news here. Still no Clarkson, no Colin Sexton, no Rudy Gay, and Lauri Markkanen is once again questionable. So Markkanen's in. He looks good on both sides, especially FanDuel where he's sub 9K. If he's out, though, Kelly Olynyk and Taylor Horton Tucker are going to absorb most of this usage. I think you go to Taylor Horton Tucker here, even with Mark Hannon in, just because with Clarkson and Sexton out, there's not really many guys they have that can take the ball up the court. Chris Dunn's been decent at it, but he's been coming off the bench. I don't mind him here. But yeah, it's kind of similar to the Spurs situation. You can kind of go to either of these two guards. I wouldn't want both in the same lineup, but Horton Tucker and Dunn both have solid upside. Who else? Kelly Olynyk. He's a little bit overpriced unless Markkanen's out, but if Markkanen's out, I do consider him kind of a borderline core option. And then Walker Kessler, another good center play. There's a ton of good center plays on the slate, though, so I don't know that I need to get to him as things stand, but certainly a situation to keep an eye on. But yeah, I think Lauri plays here, but it's really tough to say for sure. Um, we'll like these Jazz pieces much more if he does end up resting. All right, we're moving into the West Coast games now. We got 10 o'clock game. Minnesota Timberwolves at the Phoenix Suns. 235-point game total here. Nice, healthy total. So we'll start with Minnesota. All right, we got Anthony Edwards listed as probable. Prince and Noel are both questionable. Karl Anthony Towns is once again probable. So this is another healthy team who hasn't been all that healthy most of the season. You can see they're not very owned. That is because there is less usage to go around with Karl Anthony Towns back in the lineup. I could see getting to Towns around that 8K flat price tag. His minutes haven't been there though. I'm just pulling up his game log. I know he's been resting back to backs. Let's see. I mean, if I knew he'd get over 30 at 8K, I'd love him here. But yeah, I mean, he did play 32 last time out. So yeah, maybe get to some Karl Anthony Towns in tournaments, actually. I do think he's a solid option here. Not the best matchup against Phoenix, but certainly not one you need to shy away from with such a high total and a close spread. Gobert's okay. Not as interested now that Anthony Towns is back, and then Anthony Edwards looks good here. Better on FanDuel, he's only 8,600. Hasn't been having those ceiling games we expected once they traded D'Angelo Russell, but he certainly has that upside, so I don't mind him as a tournament play. Mike Conley's okay as a guard value. There are better guard values here. And then Kyle Anderson, I like a lot, but I like him much better if Prince is out. So keep an eye on that. If Prince is out, Kyle Anderson's going to look good here again. 6,500 on FanDuel would be a borderline core play for me over there. 71 a little bit too expensive on DK, but certainly would like to get a few shares in tournaments. Now we can talk about Phoenix, and this is another situation not really great for fantasy. Kevin Durant's back tonight, so obviously he's going to cut into the usage of guys like Booker, Paul, and Ayton. That's really going to take Okogie out of consideration as a value play. So there's just nothing really we can get to here from Phoenix with Kevin Durant back. Good to see for them. Maybe they'll make a run here in the playoffs, but yeah, I just really can't get to much of Phoenix and feel good about it. Obviously, Booker, Paul, and Durant all have upside. Durant probably less so coming off the injury. I can't imagine they give him his full run of minutes here. If anything, I guess maybe get to Ayton just because his usage isn't going to be too affected by the return of Durant. Still going to be under the rim, getting those rebound opportunities, playing the pick and roll. So don't mind Ayton here, but really no priorities for me on the Phoenix Suns. All right, now we get into the last game on the slate, and it is the most important game on the slate. So this is where we're going to get most of our value. The Trailblazers have packed it in for the season. So Dame is out, Nurkic is out, Grant is out, Reddish is doubtful, Simons is out, Watford is doubtful, and Justice Winslow is out. So yeah, so this is a little bit tricky. There's obviously going to be a wide spread here. We're looking at 14-point spread, 236 game total though, but they just don't have that many bodies. So guys like Keon Johnson, Nasir Little, Drew Eubanks look excellent on both sites. They're going to be your chalk value. Kevin Knox not too far behind. Very inconsistent player, but a very high ceiling. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and add Little, Eubanks, and Johnson on both sites. They're going to be chalky. So if you're playing small or larger field tournaments, there's certainly merit to fading one or more of these guys. But as things stand, they're the best value plays on the slate. So there's a good chance more value opens up throughout the day. But as things stand, these are the three I'm targeting. I really want Eubanks, Johnson, and Little on both sites. We're left with around 8K per player. And so let's go ahead. Johnson, that's Keldon Johnson. Make sure you don't get that mixed up. Sear Little, and then just Eubanks. He's center only, but I still don't mind using that spot. And we're left with over 8K per player, so we can kind of pick our favorite pay up. But yeah, all three of those guys, and then again, Kevin Knox is going to see a lot of run. Shady on Sharp, the highest ceiling of this group. So if you want to pull maybe Little or Johnson for Sharp, I could totally see it, but he's also pretty inconsistent. High ceiling, super scoring dependent though, and we have seen some rough games out of him, even with a very thin rotation. So for me, he's more of a tournament play, mostly just because he's priced up. If he was in the same price range as those other guys, I consider him a core option. But yeah, don't be shy playing some Shady on Sharp here. After that big three I listed, it's funny calling them a big three. Johnson, Eubanks, Little, Sharp is probably the best play here on Portland. I'm not going to play any Ryan Arcidiacono. He's been starting a point guard. He just stinks as far as fantasy is concerned. Probably will get to some Kevin Knox though, and the Matisse Thybulle's cheap enough that you can consider him here as well. But one more time to reiterate, really like Johnson, Eubanks, Little, and then Shady on Sharp. Some risk at that price, but he certainly has probably the highest ceiling of the entire group. So load up on Portland tonight. Obviously, a decent spot here against Sacramento as well. Tough team, but they do present the high ceiling as they do play very, very fast. No major injury news for the Kings here. So Fox, Sabonis both look fine. You could get to Barnes or Murray as last man in. Malik Monk coming off the bench, decent in very large field tournaments, but super, super risky. Kevin Huerter, high ceiling, low floor, scoring dependent guard on the wing. So yeah, we got through the game by game here. Nice little quarter start. We got Mathurin, those three pieces from Portland, and then Zach Collins over on FanDuel. We added Trey Jones over on DK. But yeah, we're left with 8K per player, so you can kind of pick your favorite payups now. Like if we go to forward, you add Giannis, you're left with 5,900 for that last spot. You don't want to pay up to Giannis, maybe go to someone like Kawhi Leonard with Paul George out, you're left with 7,500 per spot. Over on FanDuel, similar scenario, you can look to maybe Luca even, and you're left with around 6K per player. If Harden's out and Embiid's in, would love to get to some Embiid. You're left with 6,500. Really like Giannis here as well, 6,600 per player. So nice little core to start with. No surprises when we're looking at the ownership. Obviously, those Portland guys are all at the top. Um, Zach Collins, Mikal Bridges, some of those Nets players against Houston following up. But yeah, a lot of news to keep an eye on, a lot of moving parts. Certainly leave yourself some room to pivot. The Blazers are the best spot for value, but they are also uber chalky. So if you could find other value you like, there's certainly merit to fading them in tournaments. But in cash field and single entry, smaller field stuff, I do think you're probably going to want at least a couple pieces from that Portland team. As always, my name's Nick Marro. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, check the links below to sign up to Occupy today. Let's have some fun tonight, everyone, and make some money. Take care and good luck.